First up is April C. So we pause here where to insert the audio. And everybody get braced because the audio is suddenly going to improve because this is being done for April C's podcast.
Okay, Matt, it's podcast time again, which is why my voice is suddenly a lot clearer than it's been up until now. April C, creative underscore Fey, Fey, is her channel name on YouTube, and show is Off the Spinner Rack, following up from last month. And first question she's got is, what is was it the Popeye comics that inspired you to go into comics, or was it something else that triggered that career choice? Okay, Matt. This will be the please hold intro going into the answer. And now I'm going to record the answer separately in case April wants to read her own question on her YouTube channel. So this is the end of the please hold part for question number one. Welcome back, April. With 6 decades of retrospect, I'd have to give a lot of credit to whoever wrote Superman number 172. The first Superman comic book I bought was number 165, November 1963. Here's a picture of me with the 9.0 CGC copy David Birdsong bought for me, which I keep next to my desk so I can always tap into my 7-year-old self just by looking at it. Kurt Swan, inked by George Klein. The importance of number 172 for me was that it was the first book-length Superman story I ever read. One story in 3 parts instead of 3 short stories. There are other better-known 3-part stories. Superman's Return to Krypton, November 1960, Superman number 141, which I would read later. Repeatedly. There's the 2-part King Superman in Action Comics number 311 and 312, where I didn't read the first part actually until years later. But the Tyrant Superman, which is what it's called on the cover, or the New Superman, which it's called on the splash page, was my first. As can be seen by the cover, I clued in that someone was actually drawing this. I put a piece of carbon paper and a piece of regular paper under the cover and traced it. That was a couple of years later. At the time, at age 8, I sort of hovered between realizing that what I was reading was written and drawn by people, and in between that and just thinking I was checking in with what Superman and his friends were up to this month. That effect I attribute very much to Kurt Swan and George Klein, making everything visually plausible. Planting the seed of my wanting to do that. I've enlarged a few panels that constitute transformative genetic memories for me. Lois Lane and Lana Lang looking at, quote, just a picture, unquote. Lois Lane looking anguished. Lana Lang looking astonished. The visual plausibility I was talking about, which took it out of the realm of drawings and into the realm of a microcosmic other reality. Lois Lane's reaction isn't Lana Lang's reaction, and vice versa. Even, or maybe especially at age 8, I was drinking in what Kurt Swan was communicating. Excuse me. The next panel of Lois and Lana running away in the distance, and Jimmy Olsen attempting to see the photo through the telephoto lens on his camera. He's in extreme close-up, which emphasizes the microcosmic reality. We're looking more closely at him, even as he's attempting to look more closely at the photo, which he does. Suspension of disbelief. It isn't possible to view a photo someone is running with through a telephoto lens at that distance, but the impossible is made plausible by the way it's drawn. We can see that Lois is carrying the photo, even though it's microscopic. And there it is in the first panel on the next page. It is the panel, down to being lettered the same way. Jimmy Olsen and we are both reading the microcosmic caption made macrocosmic. There's an immersion in the narrative that's achieved through Kurt Swan's elevated drawing chops that really struck a chord with my 8-year-old self and my in vitro graphic novel self. Don't lose sight of that immersion effect. You can have eye candy chops out the wazoo and never come close to engaging the reader at the level Kurt Swan did. Not having read The Tyrant Superman in probably 50 years, I still had a photographic memory of Lois Lane's anguished face, the Jimmy Olsen close-up, the former Superman's sacrifice to save the Tyrant Superman's life. Hurdles himself, it says. The writer meant hurls himself, which I hadn't noticed until now in 2025 because Kurt Swan drew him as described. Hurdles himself, as only Kurt Swan could. 60 years later, in my mind's eye, with perfect clarity, I could recall Lois Lane's, "I think he's dying, Jimmy. Oh." And the 2 panels later, literal Deus ex machina, Z-ray. Lois! Exclamation mark. And Lana too. No exclamation mark. Just an ellipsis. Now I begin to remember. I was in terrible pain, but now I feel better. Superman is going to be okay. Lie still, Superman, and let the ray heal you completely. Lois Lane loves Superman, and Superman loves Lois Lane. You can see that because Kurt Swan and George Klein make you see that. I remember being at a convention in the 1990s, and there were 4 or 5 of us standing around Kurt Swan, enthusing about these memories of his work, different ones for the different guys, taking turns enthusing, and then asking in different ways, do you have any favorite stories you drew? And no, he didn't. They were all just jobs to him, forgotten as soon as they were done. Seeing how disappointed that made us, but just being honest. We were looking for something that just wasn't there. Like asking a carpenter if there are any really outstanding houses he remembers building. No, it's a series of technical problems requiring different solutions, but it's just a job. Cerebus was never just a job for me, but thanks to Kurt Swan, I never lost sight of the fact that comics is better viewed as a job than a career. If, day in, day out, you do a good 9-to-5 job of comics, you end up having a career. art being in the eye of the beholder, you end up doing capital A art in some people's eyes and not in other people's eyes. But if you put too much emphasis on making capital A art, you end up having neither a comics job nor a comics career. Choose wisely. Okay, please hold version for April's question number 2. You mentioned that a lot of your work's attention is on The Strange Death of Alex Raymond, but I noticed the book for sale on Amazon. So is that work completed or is it part of a series? Okay, and part of Matt Dow's job with Please Hold for Dave Sim and answering podcast questions is if he thinks he has the answer, he steps in and takes my place. Dave, what I sent April C. If I messed up, let me know. April, Dave has your questions, but since I'm getting pretty good at this, number 2, The Strange Death of Alex Raymond, it started in Dave's post-Cerebus comic glamourpuss as a history of photorealism in comics and pivoted to SDOAR in, I believe, issue 13. Glamourpuss ended with issue 26. In the meantime, Dave discovered that some of his assumptions about what happened were not historically accurate. So Dave started over on The Strange Death of Alex Raymond as its own work. The plan was to publish SDOAR as a 5-book series through IDW. Then Dave developed a mysterious wrist ailment that left him unable to draw, which ended the idea of IDW publishing the series. He did a search for a comparable photorealistic artist and found Carson Grubaugh, who came on board to draw bridging material to turn the 5 books into complete work and draw new pages from Dave's mock-ups. Cut to 2020 and Dave's plan to sell book 1 with a tour of all the comic book stores in California was shut down by the COVID-19 pandemic. To help fund the trip, Dave produced the California Test Market edition of The Strange Death of Alex Raymond to that point. Dave, having spent thousands of dollars trying to finish the work and seeing no way to finish it, called it quits. Dave, as a firm believer in creator control, had no objection to Carson publishing an edition of all the work completed to that point, with an ending by Carson tying everything together as best he could, which Carson did through Cerebus Trade Collection remasterer Sean Robinson's publishing company, Living the Line. Dave continued to produce mock-ups of future pages and recently, within the past year or so, regained the ability to draw at or near the level he was at before his wrist gave up. So he's producing new pages of The Strange Death of Alex Raymond with the hope of finishing the work in his lifetime. Dave can be supported in his efforts through a GoFundMe, where backers can receive digital copies of his mock-ups. And then we've got the link to that. And the Story So Far version by Carson can be found at, and then we have the link for that. I'm sure Dave will tell a version of this in his answers. As my last girlfriend, Susan Alston, said, close enough for government work. I would only add to it, I can do about a page a week, and treating it as a job, I managed to do 50 pages last year. I'm hoping I can do 50 pages a year for the next 8 years and be done with Strange Death of Alex Raymond in my mid-70s. We will see. And April's third question. I heard in a previous discussion you had with Steve Peters on spirituality versus God. You mentioned being raised atheist, and that when you read the Bible as part of research for parody, but were then converted. So my question for you is, do you remember what book or passage initiated the change in perspective? Thank you, and God bless. And God bless you as well, April. The fact that Genesis chapters 2 and 3 contradicted chapter 1 had a lot of impact on me, as did the fact that Adam lived to be 950 years old, as did the fact that everything we know about those 950 years, what he said and what he did, could be enacted in an extremely short YouTube video. Using another example, take Genesis 5:21 to 5:24. Enoch walked with God, and he was not, for God took him. It doesn't explain what walked with God means or what for God took him means. Genesis is not very persuasive as a narrative in that sense. Nothing in conventional human history suggests that human beings lived to be 950 years old. If the Bible was a polemic, it would need to explain why people used to live to be 950 and now don't. It doesn't even attempt to do that, which suggested to me that it wasn't intended to be persuasive. It was simply declarative. Genesis 5 covers several thousand years between Adam and Noah. This is what happened. Not much. These are the stripped down relevant facts. Who begat who? Which is nothing like the fairy tales, myths, and legends that atheists insist the Bible is made up of. Several chapters are devoted to Noah and the flood. And then there's another fast forward who begat who genealogy over several thousand years. And then everything starts unfolding in micro short YouTube video real time, re Abraham and his descendants in chapters 12 to 50. My theories on the Bible, primarily that God and the YHWH are two different beings, fit the text. That doesn't mean that my theories are true, just that they fit the text more closely than traditional theories. i.e., why would God tell the Hebrew people, "Thou shalt not kill," and then tell them to eradicate the Amorites, the Perizzites, the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Girgashites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites? My theory? God didn't. The YHWH did. God is your Lord, but the Lord is not your God.